fact, this presentation is split in two. One part is about thermoelasticity of tungsten, and with free energy calculations and adaptive method. And the second part is about diffusion coefficients, transport of in alloys, elastodiffusion. And the connection between the two parts is the techniques. So it's conditioning techniques that are used in both cases. So in the first case for adaptive Bising force method. So it's a variant of metadynamics that has been presented in the first talk of this morning. And and the conditioning is also used to compute mass transport computation. So it's new application of conditioning, so it's for calculating diffusion coefficient in material science, which is an important topic for experiment and modeling the long-time behavior of materials. So as an introductory slide to set the problem of molecular dynamics that everybody knows, so it's metastability, rare events, and the kinetic trapping. So we spend most of the time doing molecular dynamics in a basin of attraction, and the transition from state to state are quite rare. And so that's the main problems of molecular simulation. So this is important if we want to parameterize Markov state model, since we need the reaction rate from state to state. And then trapping also appears at a larger scale when you can perform kinetic Monte Carlo simulation, since there are still a basin of attraction at the upper scale. And also free energy difference, they control the condition of phase equilibria. So if you know the free energy of two phases, you know which is the most stable, and you can also deduce the temperature of coexistence if when you know the free energy as a function of temperature. To circumvent the problem of free energy barriers, the main technique is to introduce a bias in the simulation, which was called umbrella potential. So here it's an harmonic potential that is added to the system. So we need a reaction coordinate xi. We can define an external potential energy and do a simulation with the various positions of the umbrella potentials, so that we can cover the barrier and compute the free energy along the barrier. So the technique is one of the first technique, which I recall here to set the context and to define the notation, is to use several simulations, to perform several simulations with different locations of the umbrella potential here. From this series of simulations, we can extract the free energy surface. And for this, we need to compute the free energy as a function of the external parameter lambda, and which defines the marginal probability. And the most direct approach is stratification, which is based on the law of total probabilities here. So the canonical distribution is recovered by summing about all the marginal probability multiplied by the conditional probability of a state R given lambda. And this, since the umbrella potential, when you sum for a given position, if you sum over all the lambda values, since this is a constant, then you recover the canonical distribution with the stratification technique. So the difficulty with this approach is that we need the free energy for all the lambda. And so to avoid doing this post-processing, we can do a single simulation and consider that lambda is a parameter of the model. So it's like an internal coordinate. So it's an external parameter, but it evolves in the simulation as a position of particles. So by this, we define a joint probability, which is a probability to observe the system with a lambda value. And when we do this, we also add an auxiliary Bising potential, so that with this potential, we cover the two states and the barrier of the system. So the question is how to choose A, such that we have uniform sampling over the system. So for this, we will use the adaptive Bising force method. And to run it, in fact, we will use conditioning in this ensemble. So what we need to compute to observe in this ensemble is to, for a given lambda, we can use the Bayes relation here, which is basically the expectation form of the bias relation, and compute expectation on this. And we do conditioning by inserting the law of total expectation, both in the numerator and the denominator. And we end up with this alternate equation here, where the conditional probability of lambda given the position is inserted in the average. And this conditional probability of lambda given the position, it can be computed since we have a limited set of the external parameter lambda. So we can compute it and construct a condition estimator, which is given here, where we can calculate ensemble average in this extended ensemble for each value of lambda. So what we did, instead, we could have derived directly an estimator based with this binding. So one is the indicator function. But the advantage of doing this conditioning is that we can reduce the statistical variance of the estimate. So this is a direct result of the law of total variance, which is shown here. So if we do, for example, if we want to compute the mean value of the lambda of the external parameter in the simulation, if you use a direct standard estimator, you take the arithmetic average here, and the variance associated. So if you assume that all the lambda value are independent and not correlated, then the variance of the estimator is the variance of lambda. If we now construct with the law of total expectation a condition estimator here, where you replace the sample value by the expected value given the position here, you obtain another estimator, and the variance of this estimator is given by the variance of the expected value of lambda given R. And we see, so this is a snapshot where I displayed value with a simple Gaussian model of lambda and the position, and we see that the variance of the plane estimator is larger, so if this big square here, than the variance of the condition estimator here. And this is a result of the law of total variance, since the area of this square here and this one here, so the expectation of the conditional variance of lambda given R, the sum is equal to the variance. So this quantity will be smaller. So the advantage of conditioning in molecular dynamic simulation is that to reduce the statistical variance of the estimators. So this can be applied in the adaptive Basing force method, which is a variant of the metadynamics. So instead of updating the Basing potential, towards the free energy, we update the gradient of the free energy, so the mean force, towards the derivative of the free energy. So the algorithm is given here. So there are 5 steps during a molecular dynamic simulation. So here it's overdamp Langevin equation, but it will be a standard Langevin. We need a thermostat since we want to sample the canonical distribution. And so the first step is we compute the mean force. We update the mean force from the simulation, from the trajectory. Second step, we integrate the mean force to obtain the free energy. And from the free energy, we can compute the conditional probabilities. So this is the part that is associated to the conditioning scheme. And then we can compute the force on the system in the extended ensemble. So the advantage of the approach also is that we don't need to model the external parameter, lambda or zeta. Since we only use its mean value. Or its average value. So we don't have to sample, so the algorithm is simpler since we don't have this joint dynamics, we simply have the dynamics of the marginal system. And the fifth step is we propagate the dynamics, and then we iterate again, and with this we have, so it has been proven by several years ago that the ABF algorithms are converging, so it's a proof by Tony and Lelièvre and Gabriel Stolz in 2008. So we know that this algorithm converge to the exact, that the free energy of this algorithm will converge to the Basing force will converge to the gradient of the free energy. So as an example of this simple example of this algorithm, we can compute, so with the free energy barrier for the transition. So we consider the famous LG38 cluster, where the transition between the octahedral and icosahedral structure is quite difficult to simulate because we don't have a good reaction coordinate. But we can do the simulation at high temperature, where the Q4 order parameter can be used to sample both. And so we have an ergodic sampling at this high temperature, so we can obtain the bias used in the simulation. Here it's this definition. And from the distribution of the histogram, plus the bias, we can reconstruct the free energy along the order parameter in a very short simulation. So with this free energy difference, then we can find the transition temperature of solid-solid transition temperature between these two aggregates, just by running another IBF simulation in the two funnels, so that we have the free energy of the two structures, and the intersection gives you the melting temperature. The coexisting temperature. Here, in this case, the external parameters was harmonically coupled to the system, so that we could study a barrier. But in fact, it can also be linearly coupled to the system. And we can, for example, for LG55 cluster, we can sample directly the free energy surface and obtain and localize the peak of the heat capacity, and which correspond to the inflection of the mean energy of the system. So we can make a single simulation. We have the free energy as a function of inverse temperature. So in this case, the external parameter is the inverse temperature. And we can see the two basins of attraction here with the density of energy given lambda here, which can be computed here from the histograms. So we can see the liquid state here, the solid state here with the icosahedral structure. And the stationary state gives you the mean energy as a function in the macrocanonical ensemble, or in the other stationary points here, the mean energy in the canonical ensemble. And so we can localize the melting temperature of the structure. So that was another example of the approach that we now apply to a more difficult problem, which is computing the thermoelastic properties of tungsten at high temperatures. So we'll use this Bayesian adaptive biasing force method. So we call Bayesian adaptive biasing force for the fact of conditioning, because we recover the bias formula by conditioning. And we'll do it by developing machine learning interatomic potentials and using the MyLady package, so developed by Cosmin Marinica at SRMP. So the goal, the motivation of this study is that tungsten is considered to be used for plasma-facing material in fusion reactors, and also has a protection for spacecraft re-entering atmosphere. And so the reason is that the tungsten has the highest melting point of all metals. And but the problem is that the elastic properties, thermoelastic properties of tungsten are not well understood at high temperatures. So experiment can be done at low temperature until 2000, but we cannot do, since other materials are melting, we can do experiments at the high temperatures. So we have to do calculations, and calculations disagree concerning, for example, the bulk modulus of tungsten here. There is a strong disagreement, so the motivation of the study is to better understand try to predict the high temperature elastic properties. So the effect of temperature on the system is to it modifies the free energy. The free energy depends on temperature. So as we heat, the system will expand. So the equilibrium volume at zero pressure or zero stress is evolving. And so the goal will be to, and the elastic properties correspond to the second derivative of the free energies at each temperature. So the goal will be to compute directly the free energy as a function of different volume and different system shapes. And from the second derivative, we can obtain the elastic constants. So in cubic materials, so tungsten is BCC, there are 3 elastic constants. And so we want to compute the 3 all the constants to characterize the materials. So, the problem with tungsten is that there are many empirical potentials that have been developed, but they give very different predictions for the elastic properties. And that so for the linear expansion, some of them are not good. Some potential don't give the good linear expansion, and also there is a spread for the bulk modulus and the other elastic constants, like sharing here. And so we want to use data-driven force field to make the simulation and to construct the potential with machine learning. And the difficulty is that even with machine learned potentials, the calculations are very slow because machine learned potential are 50 to 1,000 times slower than empirical potential. So this is a flow chart for constructing a machine learning potential. So we need a database of DFT calculations. Then we do regression on it. We define also descriptors of local environment. So this is B spectrum SO4 in our case. And we do a regression, and we can construct in this way accurate ab initio, very accurate potential with ab initio accuracy, but they are still very slow. So what we want to do is to further a faster simulation using this machine learned potential, and also improve the machine learned potential, because at high temperatures the database is not large enough. So we have to do additional to enlarge our database to do the calculation. So we are going to we have applied this Bayesian adaptive Basing force method that I described in the previous slides. So we directly compute the free energy of the system starting from the harmonic reference. So at 0 Kelvin, the harmonic approximation is correct, so it gives you so there is no difference. But as temperature is increasing, then there is an harmonic contribution to the free energy that we want to compute directly by coupling the system from the harmonic system to the fully anharmonic system. And we do this Bayesian adaptive Basing force with this extended potential, which the reference is the harmonic system. And so this is again the formula that has been computed by the Bayesian formalism. So we compute the mean force, and from the mean force we integrate and obtain the free energy as a function of zeta. So we improve the algorithm by introducing a bias, a weighting function S, to accelerate the initial convergence. Because the problem with this adaptive Basing force method is that the first steps are not going good estimates, and so we want to introduce these weights that increase with time, so to give a lower weight to the initial steps of the simulation, to just so it's kind of memory kernel. And the second optimization is that when you use when we perform the SVD eigenvalue decomposition to obtain the harmonic modes, there are 3 zero modes that are not exactly zero. So we use a spectral we make a spectral filter with SVD decomposition to remove the noise associated to the translation modes that are zero. Otherwise, the potential can diverge and the simulation can explode. So this is a general filters that can be that might be useful also in the future for when we want to sample the harmonic system at a barrier where there is a negative eigenvalue for the unstable mode. So with this additional weighting function here, we observe that the convergence of the towards the uniform distribution is increased at the beginning, So what we need is that the weight this weight should increase very quickly at the beginning, and then we see that when it increases very quickly, then the convergence of the divergence of the sample distribution with respect to the uniform distribution is decreasing very, very fast. So we can reach a much faster the uniform sampling during the simulation. So we validated the method by comparing the prediction with the Bayesian method and the free energy method with standard molecular dynamics, where we look at the fluctuation of the internal stress and pressure to compute the bulk modulus. And we see that the Bayesian, the direct free energy, where we compute the harmonic mode, the method converges much faster than the traditional molecular dynamics. And also much faster, and we also need much less atoms. 128 atoms are necessary in the free energy calculations, while in molecular dynamics we need thousands of atoms because of we are average fluctuations, so it's important to have a large enough computational box. So we obtain, since we need a very small system, a 100-fold increase in computational efficiency compared with MD, molecular dynamics. And also, we have the free energy with this free energy in the simulation. And so we stopped the simulation to obtain 0.1% accuracy, which corresponds to 0.1 millielectron volt per atom, so we thought it was sufficient for the calculations. And also we wanted to test several machine learning potential. So the standard way in MyLady is to use linear regression with linear machine learn potentials. And we also tested kernel noise machine learning potentials. And since the regression is much more difficult and much heavier with kernel, we introduced sparse point selections to select the most representative point of the database. And for this, we use the Mahalanobis distance, which is a statistical distance, and so to reduce the size of the database. So in this slide, we compare the prediction of linear machine learning with Q is quadratic machine learning, GAP, which is a Gaussian kernel, and the KNML, which is a polynomial of order 4. And we obtain that good agreement between experiments at low temperatures, and we can predict the behavior at high temperature. There is a good agreement between KNML, so the kernel machine learning, and GAP at low temperature. But a slight disagreement at high temperature is because the database used by GAP is reduced, so it doesn't include high temperature configurations. So that explains the disagreement. Otherwise, the results are similar, and the advantage of the KNML method is that it's significantly faster since the kernel is simpler. So this gives a polynomial model for the elastic properties as a function of temperature that has been published recently by your PhD student. So this closes the first part of the, so I don't know how much time left I have. 20 minutes. So the second part, yeah, it's about the application of this conditioning technique to mass transport calculations. So this slide just to explain why mass transport diffusion coefficients are important in material science. For example, if you study the aging of materials under irradiation, you have the coarsening of, so it's aluminum under irradiation, electron irradiation. They produce cavities that grows with time, and in the model to predict the evolution of the microstructure, you need this coefficient diffusion here in this kinetic rate equations. Chemical rate equations here, called cluster dynamic equations in material science. And we also have thin strings, which also depends on diffusion coefficients. So the problem is how to efficiently compute these rate constants and the diffusion coefficient in practice. So what we can do is to parameterize a Markov chain from ab initio calculation, which is, usually, for example, iron and manganese system here. And we can compute the diffusion coefficient, which results from the exchange of vacancies with solute atoms. And so we can parameterize, when we parameterize a model with ab initio calculation, then typically there is trapping in simulation. So computing the diffusion coefficients here as a function of temperature and the number of manganese atoms in the simulation is quite heavy. So this graph needs like 1 million hours. Also, the model is very simple. It's pair energies. So it's very fast to compute the rates, but still it requires a huge amount of time. So the idea will be to use this conditioning technique in the calculation to speed up the measurement of the diffusion coefficient. So in this slide, I go back to the definition of the diffusion coefficient, so it's mass transport coefficient, which is defined at equilibrium. So I don't explain linear response theory, I just give the definition. So the diffusion is the limit of the mean square displacement divided by twice the time. So since we are at equilibrium, the mean square displacement, you can view it as it can be seen as a variance, since the mean displacement is 0. And the standard way to estimate the diffusion coefficient is to run KMC simulation and to take the arithmetic average over a sample of trajectories. So, and we compute for each trajectory, we compute the mean displacement, we take the square. The displacement, we take the square, after we take the mean, and we obtain, in the asymptotic limit, we obtain the diffusion coefficient. Now, to do conditioning on this on the diffusion coefficient, in fact, we can identify the diffusion after one step to the variance of the system, and we can apply the law of total variance here to decompose the diffusion. So this is the uncorrelated part of the diffusion. So it will be the uncorrelated part. So the diffusion after just one step. There are no correlation between steps. So this is the uncorrelated part. And we can split it with the law of total diffusion. And the first term is the expectation of the diffusion coefficient after one step, of the conditional diffusion coefficient after one step. And this corresponds to an intracorrelated contribution to distribution. So it's the diffusion after two steps. So this conditional variance here, its expectation is the diffusion coefficient measured after two steps. And if we further, so I don't put the calculation here, they're a bit steady, but just the results. So, and we can also decompose the diffusion coefficient after an infinite number of steps as this expectation of the conditional diffusion minus the diffusion coefficient of the mean displacement. So this law that is called the law of total diffusion, it's equivalent to the law of total variance here, but in the asymptotic limit. There is a minus sign here, while in the law of total variance there is a plus sign here. So this law will be used to compute the mass transport coefficient as an alternative way, as a second method. So we'll derive a second estimator based on this relation. So the three important formula, so it's the law of total variance, which splits the expectation of the conditional diffusion, and this intracorrelated part, which corresponds to this expectation, and the diffusion after an infinite number of steps, which is the difference between the diffusion between this intracorrelated part and the extracorrelated part, which is can be obtained in the simulation because it is an asymptotic value and it can be measured in the simulation. So so this splitting is different from the Green-Kubo formula, where the Green-Kubo formula we split with the non-correlated part and the second part which contains all the correlation. So it's a different splitting. Here we split after one step. And but this formula is very interesting since it gives you you can write the diffusion coefficient as a function of a relaxation vector that satisfies the Poisson equation. So this is a huge equation to solve, but it's a formal equation. So it's just the relaxation vector after one step here is the standard equation. I mean, the relaxation in key 1 is the expectation value of the relaxation vector after the second step plus the displacement after the one step. So this is a linear system of infinite dimension in most systems, but it's a formal solution that gives you the transport equation. And yeah.
Are these relaxation vectors equivalent to what I guess Dallas Trinkle has as like the eaters? You know, he has these relaxation.
This relation vector, yeah, it's an integral over time of the displacement. Yeah.
This would be the same thing as what he defines as those relaxation vectors.
Heat? Yeah, I don't know this.
Okay, yeah, just trying to make.
For heat, yeah, it can be defined. Yeah, for heat equation. So.
No, for in his work on correlated diffusion, I was wondering if it's the same expression or not.
Yeah. I mean, this relaxation vector is quite standard, so it appears in many works. And so it gives you, so it satisfies the Poisson equation. And so if you know how to solve this Poisson equation, you can directly compute all the transport coefficients. And the important point is that there is reversibility in the Markov chain, so that we have this relation. And this minus sign here explains the minus sign in the law of total diffusion, since it's at equilibrium. And so from this law of total diffusion, with the minus sign here, we have a second estimator. We can estimate the intracorrelated part from the variance. So we have access to the variance since we have the conditional probabilities during a simulation. And the extracorrelated part here, you can compute it with the mean displacement at each step. So at each step of the simulation, we know the mean displacement since we know there is a limited number of transitions. So we can compute it. And we have this second estimator. And so it can be run in the KMC simulation. So I don't know, so that's the standard kinetic Monte Carlo algorithm. So we start from the chemical master equation and we linearize it. So the rates are given by transition state theory. We introduce a time step, and so that we have a stochastic transition matrix. So we can make a transition at each step. And then since we make this linearization, we have to draw the exact time at which the transition occurs from the exponential distribution, where the tau is the relaxation time. So the maximum value of tau is this value here. So that's the standard BKL algorithm that is used. And so we transform the CT-MC, the continuous time Markov chain, as a discrete Markov chain plus randomization on the time. And so we run, we tested this method on, by measuring atomic diffusivity on a simple solid solution, random solid solution, with two types of atom, A and B, and the one vacancy. And the frequency of exchange with atom A is 1, and the frequency with atoms B of the vacancy with atom B is 5. And in this case, you see with the condition estimator, the variance is very small, so it converges very quickly, while it's very noisy for the standard estimator, and the same for the B. What we see is that the slow diffusing atoms is better predicted with conditioning than the fast diffusing atoms. And this is the diffusion coefficient of the vacancy. So by the error, here we see that we have a much better prediction with this conditioning process. And the gamma are the extra-correlated part, which since the intracorrelated part is like an equilibrium quantity, the expectation of the conditional variance, and the extra-correlated part, it has all the correlation from 2 to infinity. And so if you look at the speed up from the variance reduction, we see that so this is the diffusion coefficient of the function of the concentration here. We see that the speed up factor compute from the ratio of the condition of the statistical variance is quite huge, eta. You have a speed up of 10,000 for the slow diffusing atoms. Only the speed up is not as important for the fast diffusing atom, B atoms, which is the speed up is just about 2, but this is a fast diffusing atom, so it's less difficult to measure. And the speed up also correlated with the intra to extra correlated ratio here, which is quite important. So when this ratio is important, that means that the long time correlation are not important, and in this case, the speed up is more important. So the limit of the conditioning approach is that in this case, since we compute a variance, we don't have a systematic variance reduction. Unlike the standard conditioning approach for expectation, which means that in some case, when there is a very strong trapping, the method won't be good, because in case there is a very strong trapping, the diffusion coefficient will be 0. And with this method, we will try to estimate 0 by the difference of two large numbers, the intracorrelated part and the extracorrelated part. So in this case, the method doesn't work. So to palliate this problem, we introduce a control variate to select the optimal combination between the standard estimator and the conditioned estimator. So we see that when you decrease the temperature, the trapping in KMC will increase. And in this case, the optimal control variate will select. So at high temperature, there is no trapping. So the optimal control variate selects, so with value 1, the condition estimator. And when there is trapping, it goes to 0. And so the estimator selects the standard estimator. So we always have a speed up owing to this control variate. So to obtain the control variate, we just have to compute the covariance of the two estimators. And since the linear combination, the variance of the linear combination is a parabole, is a quadratic form. So we have to just minimize it so this is standard techniques. And also what we see here is that we can use kinetic path sampling, which is an advanced KMC that remove trapping. I will discuss this in a few slides. And so when in the same model, if we eliminate the source of metastability, then you see that the speed up is always very high, and so the condition estimator is always outperforming the standard one. So in fact, this estimator should be used in combination with advanced kinetic Monte Carlo that remove trapping along the simulation. So the algorithm to do kinetic path sampling, in fact, with this algorithm, we, for example, when a vacancy is trapped on manganese or copper atoms here, it will make a huge number of jumps close to the solute atoms and escape very rarely. So what we do is we solve the Poisson equation here inside the trap. So it's a local Poisson equation. And here I give the Poisson equation for the mean first passage time. So the mean first passage time is a solution of this Poisson equation. And we can do the same Poisson equation also can give, once we have the green function, we can obtain the exit probabilities from the trap. We also can obtain the mean displacement from the traps and the square of the mean displacement. And with this algorithm, we can also reconstruct the entire first passage distribution and sample the exit time with the correct statistics. Because when we solve this Poisson equation, we can use like factorization scheme. So during this factorization, we have all the conditional probabilities, and from the conditional probabilities, we can reconstruct the number of visits of each site of the system and obtain the full first passage distribution and not only the mean first passage distribution. So when we apply this algorithm to kinetics, we can have, for example, the kinetics of the precipitation kinetics of copper in iron. We can obtain an initial acceleration of the simulation by several order of magnitude. So this is the integrated speed up. So we have several order of magnitude of acceleration compared to a conventional kinetic Monte Carlo. And so now we can apply this algorithm to compute mass transport coefficients. So one requirement is that we have the reversibility. So in the derivation of the law of total diffusion, the important property to fulfill, to satisfy, was the reversibility. And when there are traps, we are not always reversible because usually we detect that we are in a trap once we are in it. So here we have to modify the algorithm and to detect the trap before to enter it. And to do it, we add additional point at the barriers, so that when the system, we compute and then we remove the site of the trap, so that the Markov chain, with kinetic path sampling, goes from barrier to barrier, and it is still reversible. So we can apply the estimator that was derived previously, which requires the reversibility condition. And this algorithm is also works well with when there are periodic boundary conditions and when the trap is percolating through the box. Since with kinetic path sampling, we can reconstruct the trajectory. So we know we can sample, so for example, when the vacancy is going to enter into these trapped atoms here, these trapping atoms here, we can sample the exit path and so know exactly the displacement and not only the mean displacement. The same way we could sample the first passage distribution, we can also sample the distribution of displacement with the algorithm. So it can be used. And so when we apply the law of total diffusion, with a trapping of, so here the frequency of exchange of the vacancy with B atom is 10 to the power 5, so it's strong trapping. You can see that we can compute the diffusion coefficient with the method, and we have, again, a significant speed up of the simulation, except for the fast diffusing atoms at low concentration, where the speed up is not as important, but this is, again, the fast diffusing atom, so it's less problematic. And so again, this is the convergence of the estimator as a function of the number of steps here. So we see that for A atoms, it's converging immediately. And for the fast diffusing, it's, the gain is less important, but still there is a gain, and the curve is much smoother. So that's the example of application of this algorithm. So the limitation of the algorithm is when there is percolation, since we have to solve a linear system with the trap. So when the trap is percolating, the system to solve is becoming very huge, and so the cost, if you use a simple solver, the cost of factorization is n cube. So the cost is becoming more important than what you save by untrapping the simulation. So, but in this case, when the system is percolating, you can go back to standard kinetic Monte Carlo and use this conditional estimator, and we can obtain a good accurate diffusion coefficient. Another point is that the factor eta, the intra to extra correlated part, is negligible. The extra correlated part is become very small after the percolation, so that's why we can use the standard kinetic Monte Carlo. So what we should do is to use sparse solver to solve the problem, that scale almost linearly for this kind of sparse system, because there is only a few number of transitions. So the number of non-zero elements in the transition rate matrix is very small for from each site. And so we have tested this sparse solver to solve first passage problems. So here in aluminium, so here in the center we have a cavity, and we can solve the mean first passage problem with this linear solver, sparse linear solver. And we can see that as a function of the system size, we can compute the flux of vacancies from a cavity. And so this is the radial flux, and this is the orthoradial flux. And also the exit probability far away from the cavity. Here we can see the anisotropy due to the elastic field. So this is elastodiffusion properties of the vacancy emission from cavity in aluminium. And we can see that solvers scale almost linearly, this sparse solver. So that's a standard sparse solver. They scale almost linearly with the system size. So once we have this, we can also compute with these solvers the sink strength in material science, which give you that are the coefficients in the cluster dynamic equations. And we can also, with this solver, have the anisotropy and the dependence on the initial point of the sinc strength. So we have the dispersion of the sinc strength from this by using this solver. And we can input this dispersion in cluster dynamics simulations and compare with object kinetic Monte Carlo. So usually cluster dynamics is implemented when kinetic Monte Carlo becomes too slow because the system is too big. But the problem with cluster dynamic equation, rate equation, cluster dynamics equation, is that there is no dispersion of sinc strength in the simulation, and the distribution of cavities. So this is again aluminum with electron cavities, with cavities due to electron irradiation. So the distribution of cavities during aging is too narrow compared to the more realistic object kinetic Monte Carlo algorithm. But by putting this dispersion of sinc strengths in the cluster dynamic equation, we can match again the distribution of the kinetic Monte Carlo simulation at a much and this, so we can have a matching results, and the advantage of rate equation simulation is that they are much faster than object kinetic Monte Carlo. So we have a better agreement of the distribution with experiment, but still we for long time kinetics we still have a disagreement with between experiments and simulations. So there are still missing parameters in the model. So the conclusion, I don't know if I have time to maybe, yeah, so for 5 minutes, okay, so I was faster than I thought. So in this talk, I presented conditioning techniques for free energy calculation, and also so we apply them to compute the thermoelastic properties of tungsten up to the melting point using data-driven force fields. We also show that conditioning is useful to compute linear mass transport coefficients. And for this, when we did conditioning in the mean square displacement, we formulated the equivalent of the law of total variance, which we call the law of total diffusion. And we constructed an optimal estimator based on this law. And so this estimator is very useful when there is no trapping. So it means that it's useful for kinetic Monte Carlo simulation when the spectrum of transition is not too large. Otherwise, we have to resort to kinetic path sampling and the advanced kinetic Monte Carlo algorithm to implement this estimator and compute the diffusion coefficients. And we also use this solver to solve the Poisson equation to compute mean first passage statistics that gives sinc strength in cluster dynamic simulations, and we compare to kinetic Monte Carlo simulations and shows the importance of dispersion in the cluster dynamic simulations. So thank you.